Today's the first day.
All right, I'm unmuted. I'm not muted.
Being 6:35, I'd like to call a special finance personnel committee meeting to order. Stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need a motion to adopt the agenda? Motion made by Mike, seconded by. I
don't think so. I'll second it.
Seconded by Tim. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Move on to a presentation by Barry Allen.
Thank you, Chairman Dorsey. So included in the packet was what's known as our pre-sale report for the bonds. So I'll be going through this. I'll go through in a little bit more detail, just so we understand what bonds are, how they work, and ultimately what you're financing. So at the outset, the preliminary par amount, which is a amount being issued, is $3,430,000. These are general obligation corporate purpose bonds, which means they're payable from the property tax levy. We'll get into that more later. Not all of it will be hitting the levy. So with that said, we can go to the next page and look at purposes. So I mentioned this at the last meeting, but when you issue bonds, which is anything longer than a 10-year repayment, you have to issue it by the enumerated purposes in the statute. And so at council tonight, there will be several resolutions that they have to pass. Ultimately, you're just doing one financing, but there's a resolution for each purpose. So with these bonds, there's $355,000 for fire department equipment, $510,000 for library, $40,000 for streets. And then this last item, $2.5 million for community development projects within TID 5. This consists of some road improvements, some parking lot improvements, and then utility relocation related to the Swiderski apartment development going on downtown along the river. The reason all this is issued as one purpose is it's all anticipated to be paid by the revenues of tax incremental district number 5. So if we issue as one purpose, the city has flexibility as to how those funds are allocated. So whether it has to go to parking lots or streets or anything within the TID, there is that flexibility to use it for projects should parking lot go up or streets go up, whatever, there's ability to reallocate for those TID projects. So that's why we're just doing the one purpose for that $2.5 million. Going on to the next section for authority. Since these are general obligation bonds, the state does limit how much principal can be outstanding for the general obligation paid from the property tax. That limit is 5% of the total equalized value of the city. And when we look at that and we add in these new bonds and look at where we are on that 5%, you're right about half of it. So you're at 51% of your limit after this debt is taken on. We consider anything under 65, 70% to be a pretty healthy amount of debt and nothing that the rating agencies would look negatively upon. So at 51%, that's a good, healthy level. It gives you flexibility to issue more debt in the future, but it's nowhere too excessive. When we look at how much is remaining after this debt is taken on, there's still 12.1 million of capacity. Now we want to recommend issuing that full 12.1 million. You want to stay around that 65, 70. So in reality, it's around 5 million of capacity to stay under anything that the rating agency may look negatively upon. The term of these bonds, they can be up to 20 years, but with the majority of this debt being abated by those tax increment revenues, we're structuring the debt to match the life of tax increment district number 5. So that only has 19 years left, which is the reason we're doing 19 years and not a 20-year repayment here. So maturities, that's when the principal starts being paid. That'll start in 2025. So we can be a little sensitive to the tax impact in 2024. So starting to pay principal in 2025 and maintaining through 2042. With debt, when you issue it at the outset, you can put in what's known as a call feature, which means at some point down the road, should rates go down interest rates go down, or should you have cash available to pay off some debt prematurely, you can do that. And so with this, we've set that date at 2033. So a 10-year call there, 10 years down the road, you can reevaluate and potentially get interest cost savings or just pay it off entirely. Let's say your TID is doing really well, you could pay off all that debt at that point. This next section is talking about bank qualification. Anytime you issue less than $10 million of tax exempt debt in a calendar year, you can deem it as bank qualified, which means banks are more willing to bid on those bonds because they get an additional incentive for bidding on that. So that opens up the amount of people that could be bidding on the bonds, which in theory drives down the interest rate that you will get on the day of sale. So being only the 3.4 million of debt being issued this year, these will be bank qualified, expanding the amount of bidders. The rating of the city is currently rated by Moody's. That rating is A1. Moody's did change some of their methodology for local governments across the US. With that changed methodology, they provided us what all the rated communities were rated, what they are rated under the new methodology. No change, still looking at A1. We have the rating call scheduled with them and we'll be working through that process. I don't anticipate any downward pressure, maybe staying at A1. That'll all be worked out with Moody's. The basis for recommendation, this is just when you issue general obligation bonds in Wisconsin, you have to sell them competitively. So since we're issuing a longer term bond because of the 3.4 million size, we have to sell them competitively. That's all this is saying. That also gets to the next section of method of sale. They will be sold competitively, which just means we have a specified time. We'll put all the information for the bonds out to the market, and then there will be a specified time that they have to submit their best price on the bonds. And at that time, we'll have several bids, and whatever's the cheapest is the one we'll go with. Premium pricing, this gets to just how underwriters will price the bonds. We're in a period of time where most of the bonds are selling with what's known as a bond premium. All that means is they're going to pay you more for your bond than the actual face dollar of your bonds. And so we can use that to decrease the amount being borrowed. And so we'll do that first, decrease the amount. And then second, any amount remaining outside of what we're limited to decreasing will go into the debt service fund. And that can buy down the first couple of years of payments on those bonds. So we are anticipating a premium bid, which is why I said that 3.43 being issued is preliminary. We do anticipate on the day of sale, we'll be borrowing a touch less than that 3.43. Other considerations, this just gets to how underwriters price bonds, and we can skip over this section. Review of existing debt. We did look at the outstanding debt of the city. Most of the debt isn't callable, so it hasn't hit that time where we can refund it. And the debt that has is 2.5%. And we're in a market of 3.7% for 20-year debt. So it doesn't make any sense to include that in these bonds. Continuing disclosure, this just is the idea that when you sell debt on the open market, you enter into an obligation to provide information to the market on an annual basis. The city already has these requirements under the existing debt, so there aren't going to be any changes here. No new requirements at all. Arbitrage monitoring. Arbitrage is the idea that when you borrow tax exempt money, you're getting it at a rate that is lower than the market. You can then take that money and you can invest it. If you invest it at, let's say, a higher rate than what the tax exempt rate is that you're paying on it, the IRS doesn't really like that. And so if you have too much interest earnings, they're going to want you to rebate that to them. Given the anticipated 18-month spend down of all the proceeds, we don't really see any concerns on the arbitrage front. You can certainly invest these funds until they're spent down. So no real concerns on arbitrage. We include this because we are in a market of interest rates going up all the time. So the rate you're borrowing at is far lower than what you could earn on investing it. This gets to the next section, which is the investment of bond proceeds. That is an allowable thing you can do. Risk factors. The major risk with this debt issue is that there is a planned abatement for TID 5 to pick up a significant portion of the debt service on the bonds. We've looked at that risk and tried to mitigate it as much as we can by structuring the principal repayment to match the anticipated revenues of tax increment District 5. So hopefully a very minimal amount would hit the levy. We do show the first 2 years, there might be a small amount that hits the levy just because of the delay in the collection of tax increment revenues from when projects are completed to when the increment is actually collected on them. And some of that impact to the levy could be offset by that premium I mentioned earlier, if some of that goes into the debt service fund. This last section here is looking at other service providers. There are a lot of people involved when you issue debt. So we just want to make sure everybody knows who we're working with. There's bond counsel for the city, that is Quarles and Brady. There's what's known as a paying agent, which just helps with making payments on the bonds over the 20-year term. That would be Bond Trust Services if the underwriters term parts of the bond up. And then the rating agency for the city is Moody's. Chugging along to the proposed debt issuance schedule. Here we are, May 11th, doing all the initial approvals for the bonds. We'll have a due diligence call with city staff the week of June 5th. We'll also meet with the rating agency on June 5th. The official statement, which is the prospectus that you put out to the market about the bonds, that will be sent out on June 12th. And then we'll be back here on June 20th for the sale results, hopefully with really good news. And July 12th is when we anticipate closing on the bonds. That means the funds will be in hand. So I'll pause here, see if there are any questions, and then we can dive into the numbers a little bit more. Not seeing any, so we can chug along to the schedules. This table 1, this is looking at where is the city today as it stands. Before we issue any new debt, what is our debt service levy? The levy for 2023 was 942,000, which when you look at the equalized value of the city, that equates to a tax rate of $1.91. And you can see it steps down year over year. So keep that $1.91 in mind. We'll have that in a later schedule as well. We can flip to table 2. Table 2 is looking at the capital improvement projects for 2023 and a portion of those for 2024 and looking at how they're being funded. So there's several different projects on here and several different funding sources. Not all of it is general obligation debt. So we bought down the amount that is being borrowed for. And that's through the use of around $700,000 of American Rescue Plan monies, as well as around 1.1 million of money from the wastewater treatment plant. And there's also around $3 million of grants and aids that will decrease the contribution from the city. So in total, there's $8 million of projects identified, but we're only borrowing for 3.4 million of it. So there's several other sources going towards the projects. At the bottom of this page, this is just taking all of the projects being issued and matching them up with the enumerated purpose under statute. So we can move along to table 3. Table 3 is taking that previous table and adding in what's known as cost of issuance. Anytime you issue debt, there are certain costs with it issuing that debt. And you have our fee, you have bond counsel fee, the underwriter will charge you a fee. And so this is just taking the full picture to get you to what you need to borrow for, since all those fees will be paid by the debt issue. So when we factor those in with some interest earnings, which we've modeled at around 52,000, that's just based on the current LGIP rate, we get to that total amount needing to borrow for the 3.43. And moving to table 4, this is really tiny numbers, sorry about that, but this is taking all of those enumerated purposes and building them out to how they're repaid. So you have the streets and the parking lots, which are abated by TID 5 on the left. Then you have streets, which would hit the levy in the middle. You have the fire department equipment, the library portion. And then over to the right is the utility relocation that's related to the Swiderski project downtown, and that executed development agreement. To give you an idea where the market is at, we built a fair amount of cushion within these rates just because we don't know where the market is heading. In spring, we saw really good sale results because there weren't a lot of bonds hitting the market. Now we're in a period where we're anticipating a very busy May, very busy June. So we just don't know where the market is going to go. Normally, when there's more bonds hitting the market, you might see a touch of an increase. So we just want to be really conservative here and set expectations. So where we model things at is 4.34%. But some of our recent sales are far lower. So we had a bond sell today over 20 years that came in at 3.5%. We had other bonds sell on Tuesday. One came in at 3.6% and another at 3.7%. So we're still under 4%. We're not those 1-2% that we saw in 2020, which was kind of crazy. But on the 10-year average, we're right on. Going to table 5. This section that's blue on the left, this is that same as table 1. This is where is the city today. We're at that $1.91. And then the orange is all the new debt. And so this in the middle, you can see the interest or the total payment in 2024 would be 182,000. And this steps up over time to 317,000 in 2042. But then if we go one step further to the right, we're taking out all that portion that is allocable to the TID 5 projects and having that supported by those revenues. So not the property tax revenues. And then going one step further to the right, this is that first 2 years of shortfall within the TID that I mentioned. So it's 135,000 in the first year, 2024, and then around 42,000 in 2025. And then we're showing the TID can fully pay for its debt from that point on. And if there is a need to levy in 2024 and 2025, that can be reimbursed to the city through the TID later on. So it's more of fronting the cost. It's not taking on the cost in total. And when we look at the net debt service levy, so what you're going to levy your property taxpayers for, we're going from 943,000 to 988,000. And that's before the application of any bond premium. So we do anticipate this 988,000 could be a little on the high side. I think this might come down a touch and we might be more around the 960, 950 where you are today. And when we look at a tax rate, that would be a 4-cent increase from $1.91 to $1.95, and then stepping down year over year. There's a lot of information on this schedule. It's one of the more important ones in here, so I'll pause and see if anybody has any reaction or comments.
You can also see that what is built into here is our ability to bond again. When we go down over to Oshkosh Street in 2025, you see that the tax rate decreases. Harry and I visited about the other projects that are going on within the city and leaving capacity within this bonding so that we're able to do that. Also, again, in 2027, you see another drop, and that's when we would go on Pearl Street. So those anticipated projects, and then there'll be a natural drop, every so many years after that, so we can continue moving forward within the community and in our street projects.
Thanks, Judy. We can move on to table 6. Table 6, this is looking at the general obligation debt capacity for the city to take on new debt. And one thing we wanted to show here was, to Judy's last point, there are several known projects that will be coming in the next couple of years that were not included in this financing. So we want to make sure that the city does have capacity to take on those projects. And the good news is, yes, there is. So when we just add in the 2023 projects, you would be at, or the 2023 borrowing, you would be at 49% by the end of the year of that 5% limit set by the state. When we add in an anticipated $4 million borrowing in 2025, you would jump up to 57%. And then in 2027, we modeled a near $3 million borrowing, and it would jump up to 59%. So still staying under 60%, still a healthy level of debt. And the reason we didn't model these in the previous schedule and show you the tax impact of future borrowings is because we don't know what the abatement sources might be. There might be TID revenues at that point that can pay for some of this. There might be other grant funds we haven't considered. So we didn't want to build that into the tax rate and show something that may not be a true picture. So for now, understand that there will be capacity to take on this debt on a debt limit basis. And when we get to those projects, we'll look at ways to avoid having as much of this hit the general property tax levy as possible. And then this next schedule is looking at the cash flow for TID 5. And just to remind everybody, TID 5 is a downtown area. Right now, the only projects we have modeled in for the revenues to support all the expenses of the district are the First State Bank project, and that's Swiderski development downtown. Those are the only two projects. So there's likely going to be other things that happen in your downtown area, likely just a general increase in the value year over year. So these revenues we're showing are probably on the conservative side. And even with that, we're showing the district cash flows and that it can pick up this bond issue, make all the debt service payments on it, as well as the other obligations that it has. And with that, we're showing closure even a year early. And then the last graph is just looking at where have rates been over the 10-year history. So you can see in 2021, even kind of the start of 2022, we're in this really crazy low rate environment. And we're not there anymore, but we're not any different than we were in 2018, 2019. We're right back to where we were pre-COVID. So they are higher, but they're not crazy high. They're on the average of the 10-year. That is all I had. So
And I also provided, Harry talked on a really high level about the projects that were happening with this bonding. So here is the detail of all of the projects that are happening within that bonding. Most of them have been bid, so they should be pretty good estimates of where we're going to come in at. So I just wanted to provide that detail to you.
I was just wondering, you're saying that our bonding is at 51%. I'm not going to ask you to pull out a number now, but for our next economic development or our next finance meeting, could you give us a scale of what the city has been at over the years? I mean,
Certainly.
is that something that we're higher than normal, kind of level at, or, you know, I'm just kind of wondering if that is kind of what we've been doing in the past.
Yep. No
Awesome.
problem.
Do I have to do anything with number 4?
I'm sorry.
Do I have to do anything with number 4?
Oh, yeah. Quarles and Brady actually sent us out and I can't read that.
A
on
bond
my-
council agreement.
Yeah, a bond council agreement, which means, and I don't know, Harry, if you've seen one of these before. Okay. But it is the first time that I remember actually having to bring this forth to be approved. But what it is saying is we're using Quarles and Brady as our bonding agent. So you agree as a council that that's who we're using as our bonding agent. That's basically all the contract says. So we will need a motion to approve Quarles and Brady, and we have been using them since I've been here. So my recommendation would be to move forward with utilizing Quarles and Brady as our bonding agent.
Can I get a motion?
So move. Second.
Motion been made by Mike, seconded by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. For a motion to adjourn.
Just got
Sorry.
one last question. I apologize. Have we entered a developers agreement with SC Swiderski.
Stole my thunder. That was gonna be in my report
Okay.
tonight.
Well, I was just wondering if we're gonna go out to bond and we still don't have that signed.
We
so-
received it yesterday, which is
Okay.
perfect timing for all this stuff. So you'll hear that from my report too. but
Okay.
Yes.
I'll look for a motion to adjourn. So move. Motion been made by John, second by Tim. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
We're good.
All right.
If he does, I know. Me and Dennis will take one. We'll get K's, right?
Ready?
Yep.
All right, 7:06, we'll call the common council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A roll call has been taken.
Yes.
All right, next is ratification of May 2023 regular council meeting schedule. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made, second by Mr. Dorsey. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried by all. All right, we're looking for a motion to adopt the agenda, but I have, we're gonna strike Board of Public Works, line 8. We're gonna remove that with our motion.
Make motion.
Mrs. Nagowski made the motion. Can we get a second? Second by Mr. Fache. Any additions or corrections? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried as well. Approval of 4/18/2023 Common Council minutes. Look for a motion for Mr. Herder. Who seconded? Ms. Barrington? Any additions or corrections to those? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Move along to authorization to pay the bills, Mr. Dorsey.
Mr. Honor, make a motion to pay the bills in the amount of $655,965.
Motion been made, second by Mr. Herder. Any additions or corrections to those? If none, please cast your ballots.
Oh, that's not right. It's the wrong one.
You want to strike your vote?
Yes.
I can do it on the minutes.
All right, take a voice vote from you.
Yes.
Yes. Motion carried by all, and let the record know clerk will represent that in the minutes. Move along, public comment. Public comment. Hearing no public comment, we'll move on to standing and special committees. Board of Public Works, Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Board of Public Works met Monday, April 10th. Meeting is called to order at 5:15. There's no public input. Wastewater treatment plant update. Wastewater notes are included in the packet. We recommended to council approval of primary assessment resolution for the water laterals on Quincy Street from Wyman Street to Smith Street. Director Garsky recommended approval of the preliminary assessment resolution for the water laterals that are connect to a section of the water main that is being replaced on Quincy Street from Wyman to Smith Street. Public Works would handle the assessment related to the project. New London Utilities is looking into funding to help with the cost. Motion was approved by all. Next was recommend to council the ordinance for new stop sign locations. An ordinance for the new stop sign locations was brought to the board. This is a continued effort to provide control to intersections in New London. 6 intersections were selected with McKinley Street crossing West Wapaka Street to a high priority due to multiple inquiries by the residents in the area. Motion was carried by all. Next was review and approve downtown lighting for the 2024 downtown reconstruction. Director Garsky brought to the board lighting options that were reviewed at the public input meeting held on April 26th. The standard black round pole with a simple base was presented with 4 different arm styles and 5 different luminaires. The style that the public was in favor of was presented to the board. Discussion of the costs and additional expenses for flag holders, banner brackets, and outlets took place. It was agreed upon to use the design what the public had chosen with the flag holders, banner brackets, and outlets installed. Motion carried by all. Next was approve review and approve parking line markings for 2024 downtown reconstruction. Two different designs styles were brought back from the public input meeting. Director Garsky discussed the benefits of having a layout that had two 20-foot stalls and an 8-foot space versus having all 24 stalls back to back. Knowing there will be no reduction in number of stalls, it was recommended to go with the two 20-foot stalls with an 8-foot space. Motion carried by all. Discuss making St. John's Place and Layton Court one-way streets. Director Garsky brought up several points related to the implementation, the one-way streets. The new construction would eliminate the problems and concerns related to safety due to correctly marking parking stalls and intersections. Other safety concerns were also addressed with the curb extensions. Discussion then focused into Lincoln Court, defining that what was to be one-way parking lot versus the road leading to Apaka Street. Further discussion on each needs to be singled out, tabled, and no motion was made. Next was discussion on one-sided parking on St. John's Place. Director Garsky stated there is ample room for parking on both sides of St. John's Place. Street width is comparable to other streets in New London with parking on both sides. Proper spacing of parking stalls will allow for better visibility at intersections. Confirmed no change in parking on both sides of St. John's Place. No motion was made. Next was discussion on the parking fee for overnight parking on city property. Director Garsky brought up discussion for fees to park on city property, off-street, overnight, with a permit and in designated areas. Several board members brought up the difficulty of enforcement. Due to enforcement questions and interest in the idea, more information will be gathered and will be brought back to future agenda. Subject was tabled and no motion made. Next was the director's report. The director's memo was included in the packet and reviewed by the board. Anniversaries, Ted Christians, facility supervisor, 8 years on May 11th. Garrett Garvin's wastewater operator, 2, 9 years on May 30th. Walkthrough assessment of our sanitary sewer reconstruction is put back due to high water conditions and scheduling conflicts. They will take place the week of May 8th. The live lateral verification is complete. Spring cleanup is going well. The street sweeper is following up behind the pickup crews. Future agenda items, discuss about large item disposal services, traffic lights at the intersections of Shawano Street and Wolf River Avenue, one-way street separating each individual street and parking lot for discussion, and city property off-street overnight parking. Being there is no further discussion, we adjourned. I'd like to make a motion to approve the preliminary assessment resolution for water laterals on both sides of Quincy Street from Wyman to Smith Street.
Motion been made and seconded by Mr. Barrington for approval of the preliminary assessment resolution for the water laterals on both sides of Quincy Street from Wyman Street to Smith Street. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Mr. Barrington.
Sorry,
Do you mean that?
wrong button. Should be a yes.
Should be a yes. Clerk, we'll make that note in the minutes. That motion's carried 10-0.
Next, I'd like to make a motion waiving the rules to adopt an ordinance upon one reading.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded by Mr. Dorsey to consider waiving the rules to adopt an ordinance upon one reading. Any additions or any further comments? Please cast your ballots. That motion's carried 10-0.
Next, I'd like to make a motion for approval of the ordinance adding stop signs on specified streets.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded by Mr. Herder. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. That motion's carried 10-0 as well.
Next is make a motion for approval of downtown lighting for the 2024 downtown reconstruction.
Motion's made, seconded by Mr. Barrington for approval of downtown lighting for 2024 downtown reconstruction. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Mr. Besaw. That motion's carried 10-0.
Next, I'd like to make a motion for approval of the parking line markings for 2024 downtown reconstruction.
Second.
That motion been made and seconded by Mr. Ritchie. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. That motion's carried 10-0 as well.
Next, I'd like to make a motion for approval, the use of bonding funds, the amount of $380,000 for the replacement of the 1994 Caterpillar road grader.
Motion been made and seconded by Mr. Herter for approval of the use of bonding funds in the amount of $380,000 for the replacement of the 1994 Caterpillar road grader. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Ms. Magowski, motion carried 10-0.
Next, I'd like to make approval for the use of bonding funds in amount of
That
$41,000.
one's was stricken. Yeah,
We're not doing that one.
that line item's not on there no more.
Okay,
We approved that in
being that not on there anymore, that's all I have, Your Honor.
thank you, Mr. Hess. All right, moving along, finance personnel, Mr. Dorsey. Mr. Fisher, you're gonna take that.
In your package, you have corrected minutes for April 5th, 2023. And here are the minutes from May 3rd. May 3rd, the Finance Personnel Committee met at 5:15 PM in the council chambers. Meeting was called to order. Everyone approved, 9-0. City Clerk Nicole Ryerson updated the committee on the Class A liquor license ordinance with the noted changes needed to allow gas stations to sell liquor. Motion was made by Barrington and seconded by Roberts to recommend to council approval of the ordinance allowing gas stations to sell liquor. This will be done in one reading. Alderman Roberts asked if there was any concern on allowing the businesses to sell with none being noted. Motion was carried 9-0. Utility Manager Jason Bassett brought forth a resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing. The purpose of this resolution is to allow the utility to spend money on projects listed within the resolution and be reimbursed by the Safe Drinking Water Loan Program that is funding with the allotted after commencement of the projects. Motion was made and seconded. Recommend to council approval of that resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing. That carried 9-0. Next, Scott Bleck, Administrator for the School District of New London, presented the newly recognized School District of New London Continuous Improvement Plan. Committee thanked Mr. Bleck for his presentation and appreciates the open communication and partnership between the city and the school district. Next, the Finance Director Radke reviewed the monthly finance reports and her director's report was discussed. There being no further business, motion was made to adjourn at 5:54 PM. And I would like to note finally, the next regularly scheduled Finance Committee meeting will be held in the council chambers on June 7th at 5:15 PM. And that is all for the minutes. And there is a list of the monthly license list, and I should turn it back over to Chairman Dorsey to go through the motions.
Thank you,
For a
Mr.
motion
Fisher.
to consider the monthly license list.
Second.
Motion been made, second by Mr. Herter. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I need to make a motion to consider waiving the rules to adopt an ordinance upon one reading.
Second.
Motion been made. Who seconded that?
Yes.
Mr. Hess? Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. That motion's carried by all.
Consider or make a motion to approve an ordinance allowing gas stations to sell liquor.
Second.
Motion made and second by Mr. Roberts for approval of ordinance allowing gas stations to sell liquor. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Mr. Ritchie? Would you care to vote, please? Thank you. That motion carried 10-0 as well.
Make a motion to approve an ordinance updating the alcohol licensing quotas. This is the second reading.
Motion's been made and seconded by Mr. Barrington for approval ordinance updating alcohol licensing quotas. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballot. That motion's carried 10-0 as well.
Make a motion to approval of the utility resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from the proceeds of borrowing.
Second.
That motion been made and seconded by Mr. Roberts for approval of utility resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. That motion's carried 10-0.
Make a motion for approval of initial resolution authorizing $2,525,000 in general obligation bonds for the community development projects in the tax interventional district number 5.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded by Mr. Besaw. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. That motion's carried 10-0 as well.
Make a motion to initial resolution authorizing $40,000 in general obligation bonds for street improvement projects.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded by Mr. Herder for approval initial resolution authorizing $40,000 general obligation bonds for street improvement projects. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. That motion's carried 10-0.
Consider make a motion for approval of initial resolution authorizing $355,000 of general obligation bonds for equipment of the fire department.
Second.
Motion been made. Who second? Mr. Hess? Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. And that motion's carried 9 yes with 1 abstention.
Make a motion to consider approval of initial resolution authorizing $510,000 of general obligation bonds for the library projects.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded by Mr. Fache. Any further discussion?
So this is that 750,000 that we approved a year ago. Is that right? It was 500,000.
Yeah, that's the rest of it.
Yep.
So then that obligation.
Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion carried 10-0.
Make a motion to consider approval of a resolution directing publication of notice to electors relating to the bond issues.
Second.
Motion made, second by Mr. Herder. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Mr. Besaw. Motion carried 10-0.
Make a motion to consider approval resolution providing the sale not to exceed $3,430,000 general obligation corporate purpose bond series 2023A.
Motion made, seconded by Mr. Fache for approval of resolution providing for the sale of not to exceed $3,430,000 general obligation corporate purpose bonds, series 2023A. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Mr. Hess. That motion's carried 10-0.
Motion to consider and approve the bond council agreement with Corals and Brady.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Ritchie. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Mr. Fisher and Mr. Ritchie. That motion's carried 10-0.
That is all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey, and thank you, everybody, for staying here to vote. All right, moving along, Park and Recreation, Mr. Besaw.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Park and Rec Committee met on Tuesday, May 2nd. Meeting was called to order at 5:15. Motion to adopt the agenda was presented. All approved. Motion carried 12-0. Public input, there was none. Review bid tab and consider contract for 2023 riprap project on the Berniger Riverwalk. Director Soul recommended awarding the contract to be awarded to Radke Contractors Incorporated for $17,993. Motion was made and seconded to approve the contract to Radke Incorporated for 2023 riprap project on the Berniger Riverwalk Trail. Motion was carried 12-0. Review bid tab and consider contract for 2023 Hatton Wall reconstruction. Director Soul recommended awarding the contract to Holton Brothers Incorporated for $47,358. This is to reconstruct the portion along Werner Allen Road. Motion was made and seconded to award the contract to Holton Brothers Incorporated for 2023 Hatton Wall reconstruction. Motion carried 12-0. Review the bid tab and consider contract for the 2023 Hatton Stadium exterior renovation. Director Soul recommended awarding Holton Brothers Incorporated for the contract. This project is in conjunction with the Hatton Stadium Foundation. The full amount, $263,133, would be split with the City of New London, responsible for $131,566,050. Motion was made and seconded to award the contract to Holton Brothers Incorporated at the amount of $131,566.50. Motion carried 12-0. Wi-Fi and parks discussion, public draft and field questions. Director Soul brought to the committee information and a quote for adding open Wi-Fi to the park. Infrastructure is there due to security cameras already being present. And this can accommodate public Wi-Fi by adding the necessary equipment. The draft of the policy of use is structured off the National Park Service Wi-Fi and network user terms and conditions. This was met with a positive response. This will be included in the capital project budget for future for approval. No motions made at this time. Director's report was included in the agenda packet and viewed by the committee. Anniversary, Jim Thorpe, 10 years, full-time employee, 21 years total time working with the City of New London. Open Parks caretaker position has been filled. Jacob Brosh started 5/8/2023. Soul walked through the Newton Blackmore Trail project with Luke Hammond and Craig Shue from Aries and Associates, putting together an extensive task list of things that need to be done before the trail will be formally open to the public. Applied for Wapaka County Greenway grant for cost of engineering phase 2, the bridge to the community, the Newton Blackmore Trail Bridge. Christine Cross submitted historic preservation questionnaire for Hatton Park. Chairman's report, there was none. Future agenda items, seasonal wage schedule. Next Park and Recreation meeting will be held on Tuesday, June 6, 2023 at 5:15. Being no further discussion, motion to adjourn was approved. The meeting was adjourned at 5:46. Motion was carried 12-0. I would ask for council approval to consider approving the contract with Radke Contractors Incorporated of Winneconne for 2023 Berniger River riprap in the amount of $17,993.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded by Mr. Ritchie. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Mr. Herder. Motion carried 10-0.
I would look for considering, consider approval of contract with Holton Brothers Incorporated of Grafton for 2023 Hatton Park Wall reconstruction for $47,358.
Motion been made and seconded by Ms. Croy. Any further discussion on that item? Please cast your ballots. That motion's carried 10-0 as well.
And I would look for consider approval of a contract with Holton Brothers Incorporated of Grafton for the 2023 Hatton Stadium exterior reservation for $263,133.
Motion made and seconded by Ms. Croy. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Mr. Dorsey. That motion's carried 10-0.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Besaw. All right, Planning Commission, Mr. Ritchie.
The planning commission meeting Tuesday, April 27th. The group participated in the pledge of allegiance. A motion was made and seconded to adopt the agenda. The April 6, 2023 meeting will be reviewed. A motion to accept the minutes was made and seconded. The first action item on the agenda, it was reviewed for approval for affidavit for correction of CSM 8133, parcel 331277-111. Motion was made and approved for the correction. Second action item was for review of approval of utility and trail easement for parcel 331277-111. Motion was made and approved. Approval for the easement. Third item was discussed and possible approval of a site plan for the purpose of a strip mall at 1186 North Shawano Street. Motion was approved and seconded. The purpose of proposed chicken ordinance was approved by the zoning administrator to open discussion. There was a fair amount of discussion, both positive and negative, as it relates to the possible adoption. The chicken ordinance will be taken up at the next scheduled meeting for further discussion. The zoning administrator agreed to contact other municipalities for pros and cons in dealing with ordinance allowing for keeping chickens. The next meeting date has been scheduled for Thursday, May 25th, 2023. Motion was made to adjourn the meeting. Meeting was adjourned at 6:04. All I got. So I have to consider approval for the ordinance to be adopted for 2040 comprehensive plan. Second.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded by Mr. Dorsey for approval of ordinance to adopt 2040 comprehensive plan for second reading. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion carried by all.
Okay, I'm looking for an approval to consider approval for utility and trail easement and affidavit for correction instrument for parcel 331277-111.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded by Mr. Herder for approve utility and trail easement and affidavit of correction instrument for parcel 331277-111. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. That is also carried 10-0.
And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. All right, next up is the Economic Development Committee, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Your Honor. Our Economic Development Committee met Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 in the council chambers at 5:15. It was a motion to approve the agenda and carried by all. The minutes were motion and second carried. As his first meeting presiding as chairman, Roberts took the opportunity to take a step back and discuss what economic development means to committee members and highlight future focuses for the city. Conversation revolved around past efforts with attracting development in the industrial park, the need to keep a pulse on small business, the upcoming downtown reconstruction project, enhancing community quality of life elements, questions on how to retain and attract younger adults, the need for more housing and placemaking opportunities. Discussion will continue in the future about future goals. Fourth, provided information on research options for purchasing ad space on digital billboards in the Foxville region. The fees can fluctuate depending on the sign location. But as an example, the cost of a digital billboard on Highway 15 in Grand Chute is around $1,200 per month. The committee will consider future opportunities to market the city utilizing digital billboards. Fourth, also updated the committee on replacing the wraps on the city's billboard on Highway 45. Unfortunately, due to the staffing turnover, the company the city was working with was not able to inspect the billboard structure before the ground thawed. The sign will be inspected once the ground around the site dries or freezes. Staff are starting to work on ideas for the sign design, which will be presented at a future meeting. Chamber of Directors report included Zero's Cafe in the former Bucky's Restaurant opened April 3rd. Kapitsky and Horth completed a few business visits to the new Napa Auto and Bloom to Bloom Greenhouse, formerly Rice's Greenhouse. Go Fast Manufacturing on Dryer Road held an event on March 28th to celebrate the first award completion of the Wisconsin Automation Implementation Grant sponsored by the WEDC, in which the business purchased an automation laser cutter. Wolf River Lawyers has purchased a building at 202 West North Water Street and anticipates moving into their new location in August. Boss Mam's Aesthetics opened April 24th at 108 West North Water Street. Maytag Coin Laundry is under new ownership. There were some rumors stating that the location closed down. However, it is open and just under new ownership. Tessie Crafty Creations and Marriott Travel will not be renewing their lease at 106 North Water Street, as they will be moving into home business locations. Kapitsky indicated that she's working with several other businesses for possible relocation in that storefront. City Administrator's report. Fourth, reminded the committee that the city no longer has a revolving loan fund, as the state canceled the program and retracted the funding. However, stated that the Wapaka County Economic Development Corporation has a similar loan fund program that New London businesses can take advantage of. Future agenda items were discussed. No public comment was provided. Our next committee meeting will be Tuesday, May 30th at 5:15. There's motion and second to adjourn, and it was carried by all at 6:25. That is all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. All right, next on the agenda is minutes and reports. They will stand as read in your packets. And we can keep moving right along to reports of officers on recent events and announcements to the public. We'll start off with the mayor's announcements. First, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank and congratulate all these service anniversaries that we have. And next, very important, Poppy Day proclamation. One of my favorite proclamations. Whereas millions of Americans have served in the United States Armed Forces and millions more have lost their lives in battle to preserve and defend the freedoms and quality of life enjoyed by people throughout our country. And whereas we must be reminded of the price of war and the debt owed to those who have died fighting for our country. And whereas born out of the tragedy of World War I, the red poppy that bloomed all over Europe following the war now symbolizes the sacrifice of lives in all wars. And whereas each year, the American Legion Auxiliary Department of Wisconsin reminds all Wisconsinites of this debt through the distribution of the memorial poppy, those flowers made by disabled veterans of Wisconsin. Whereas this month and every month, we honor our veterans for their service and pay tribute to those who sacrificed their lives to uphold the values we share. Therefore, I, Mark Herter, Mayor of the City of New London, counties of Outagamie and Wapaka, Wisconsin, do hereby proclaim May 26th and 27th, 2023 as Poppy Days in New London. Furthermore, I ask that all citizens honor those who paid that price by remembering them on Memorial Day, Monday, May 29th, 2023. All right, next up is my appointments for the month. And we have appointments for Housing Authority Board, Police and Fire Commission, and Revolving Loan Fund Review Board. All right, in line 3, I need consider council confirmation for appointment to the Housing Authority. So I will need a motion for that.
Second.
Motion been made by Mr. Herter, seconded by Mr. Roberts. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion carried 10-0. Thank you all. And that is all I have in my portion. So moving right along, City Administrator, Mr. Hurth.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have one thing tonight. I know it's been a long time coming, but yesterday afternoon, I'm happy to report that we did receive the signed copy of the SC Swiderski Developers Agreement for the downtown riverfront development. So what that means, according to the developers agreement, next steps will be tonight, the council approved some of the easements that are needed for the property. Those will be executed and recorded. Robert's going to be working on getting the utility relocate project under contract with the contractor that was approved last month. They're going to be starting to begin that utility relocate in June. We would close on the property on or before July 31st, and then SCS would start their project sometime this fall, which more than likely they're going to start their site fill. I don't know if they're actually going to start doing foundation work quite this year, but they've got a bunch of site fill they got to do first. So they are in the developers agreement, need to start that at least this fall. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Hurst. I would like to take time to thank you for all your work that you put into that, staff and council and all those involved. That was a big project, so thank you. All right, Chief of Police, Mr. Schlater.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had a couple of anniversaries. Chad Ewing, 3 years, Trent Martin, 2 years, Jeremy Mulroy, 9 years, Ben Schmidt, 17 years. And then I'd also like to thank Kathy Martins as she retired today. It was her last day, and she had put in about 15 years here at the city of New London as a dispatcher for us. So I'd like to thank her. That's all I got.
Thank you. She's always been a pleasure to work with as well. All right, Director of Public Works, Mr. Garsky.
Thank you, Your Honor. May 21st through May 27th is National Public Works Week. It's during that time we recognize public workers for all they do for our communities. Thank you. I would like to thank our public workers that keep the public facilities neat and clean and in working condition. The workers that work countless hours clearing snow in the winter to simple things like trip hazards on sidewalks. I'd also like to thank the workers who have to maintain a wastewater treatment plant to make sure that we discharge only safe water back to nature. It's all hard work and much appreciated. And I have a public announcement. I'm asking that everyone stays clear of the dead end of Mill Street, north of Wolf River Avenue. You'll see a coned off area. We've had a force main break. So what's happening is the lift station trying to get the sanitary up to the manhole has developed a leak. It appeared through the asphalt. So we called in locates. We're having a contractor come in tomorrow. We made a containment area, so there's no further leaking. We put in a pump to pump whatever does seep down towards the river into the pit. So for now, we're asking that all public stay out of that area until it's fixed, and they should be in first thing in the morning working on that.
If they can't go.
And that is all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Garsky. And I'd also like to note, I do appreciate all that the Public Works Department does for our community. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is Director of Park and Recreation, Ms. So.
Thank you, Mayor. At the Recreation Department, registration is in full swing with open registration for Kids Fishing Day, Camp Hatton, and all other programming for this summer. You can find that online at www.newlondonwi.org or to give us a call at 982-8521. At the Aquatic and Fitness Center, they will be preparing for summer by closing down for their annual maintenance week. This will be May 21st through May 29th, so be aware that we will be closed during that time to do a complete cleanup of the Aquatic and Fitness Center. Then when they get back, there will be a pool party. School will be let out, and so they're going to celebrate to kick off summer at the pool. Kids can take part in contests, games, and more activities and events throughout the swim, on the pool deck, and outside, hopefully. The date is Sunday, June 4th at 11 a.m. And the fee is $2 for that. And then we also have registration beginning for summer swim lessons beginning May 30th. That session does begin the week of June 12th, but we do encourage you to register as soon as possible, as we have been having classes fill quite quickly. You can do so on our website or by calling the pool at 982-8524. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. So. Next up is Utilities Manager, Mr. Bassett. I do not see him in the audience. Does anybody have a report? All right, thank you. We'll keep moving along. Fire Chief, Mr. Welfer, I don't see him. Mr. Ritchie, will you be taking over? No reports. Beautiful. Keep chugging along. Next, Clerk Ryerson.
You'll note in your packets, there is a corrected version of the election results from the April election. There were no issues with the results themselves, just the document did not capture all the wards. So this month I included a corrected version of that document. And the clerk's office has been busy taking in applications for alcohol licensing, which the new year for alcohol licensing will start on July 1st. And that's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ryerson. All right, next on the agenda is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Roberts. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.